This should be a really interesting conversation with somebody who is considered the greatest of all time when it comes to playing chess and thinking about strategy. We're going to be talking about a lot of different subjects today. My name is Michael Guyad, publisher of the Lead Lag Report. It's joining me for the hour, Garry Kasparov, who is considered the all-time greatest chess player in the world. Has a lot to say about current state of affairs, the economy. But Garry, for those who are not familiar with your background, let's start from the beginning. Talk about who you are, how'd you get involved in chess, and the progression. And I know you've had this question many times in your career, from moving and retiring from chess to what you're doing today.
Okay, so where do you want me to start? So back to April 13, 1963.
Why not?
Born in Baku, Azerbaijan, from Jewish father, Armenian mother. Learned to play chess, most likely in the winter of 68, 69, age 5.5, watching my parents trying to solve a puzzle from local newspaper. Got mesmerized by these magic pieces on the wooden board. Still, very much in love with the game. Began chess lessons at age 7. So tragically, my father died when I was 7, but his last decision in life was faithful for me because on his side of the family, Jewish side, everybody was a musician. Though my father was a chemical engineer, but he also graduated violin class. But he thought that I had much better eye for chess, so logical mind. So he just told my mother just a few months before he died that, we had to send him in chess rather than music. So grew up with my mother and her family. So that's why I shifted, that's my name has changed in 1975 from Weinstein to Kasparov. Was a chess prodigy, junior world champion, junior champion of USSR under 18 when I was 12, repeated it when I was 13, junior world champion under 20 when I was 17, the youngest world champion in history when I was 22. That's my first 22 years in a few sentences. Stayed on top of the world rating list for 20 years, retired in 2005, moved into what people mistakenly call Russian politics. For me, it was always a fight for human rights and democracy. I tried to prevent Russia from sliding back in the dark ages of Soviet and KGB rule. I may say I failed, but I did what I believe was right. And due to my political activism, I had no choice but to leave Russia, facing imminent arrest in 2013. Now I live in New York, reside in New York with my family, with kids, 2 kids born in the United States, 15 and 7, and 2 other kids from previous life, 29 and 25, because I had other marriages. And right now I'm speaking from Croatia. That's my summer home. I spent every summer here since 1993, was a big friend of Croatia. And when I left Russia, the Croatian government granted me the citizenship just to make sure that I could travel around the world, which is very helpful these days. And I had a few projects, some in chess, some outside of chess. Kasparov Chess Foundation started 20 years ago, actually will be 20th anniversary, celebrated in New York. It's the probably most effective private chess foundation in the world, worked both on curriculum, blueprint for schools, and also on young stars. We had 18 grandmasters since the beginning of the program in the United States in 2005, and we're working also now in Europe. And I have branches of Kasparov Chess Foundation around the world. Had so many engagements in various political, human rights, democracy activities. I'm chairman of the Human Rights Foundation since 2012, followed footsteps of my hero, Václav Havel, the late famous dissident president of Czech Republic. In 2017, also founded the Renew Democracy Initiative, which is the American-based 501c3, aimed to bring American politics back to mainstream, to the center, and fighting the radicals on both sides. And of course, active member of Russian opposition. As of now, very much engaged in helping Ukraine winning the war, which I believe is our war, because it's a war not to restore Ukrainian sovereignty, but also to defend the values of democracy and values of international law and order. Is it good enough?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Okay, so there's a lot of different directions I want to go with this. I listened to your.
I'm sorry, I used to wear many hats.
No. When you're an entrepreneur and you're great at what you do, you want to obviously transfer that greatness to other domains, which we'll talk about. But I named this space "Becoming Greatest of All Time" because I think there's this interesting debate you can argue as to what really defines success. Now, I'm personally a big believer in this idea that if you're going to drill it down into an equation, and you've probably seen this before, success equals talent plus obsession plus error. talent plus obsession plus error. And I know you've talked about this a bit with Patrick Bet-David, who I had in one of my spaces not too long ago. But obviously, you have the talent. Obviously, you have the obsession. The error is luck, good or bad. The question I want to ask you is how crucial is it for somebody who doesn't have natural inborn talent to stay in the game if they want to succeed and be an incredibly hard worker? Because I've heard you talk about this idea before that talent isn't necessarily being a chess player, talent isn't necessarily being a musician. Talent can be just being relentless in how hard you work at a particular field.
Yeah, but I wouldn't, try to oppose one to another. So it's not that, you can become a great chess player by simply, spending 10,000 hours. Yeah, you can reach certain level of competence, but you will not be top 10 or even higher unless you have some natural talent. But if you have natural talent and you are not hard worker, and I always said that working hard is also talent. So then, you will be limited as well. So for me, it's a combination. It's a combination of natural talent because I had natural talent for chess. I could have spent probably 10,000 hours, doing music. But my father recognized that it would be not a waste of my time, but definitely would not help me to reveal my potential. So I think we're all born with some kind of a talent. And it's when you said error, I would say probably element of luck. It's quite important because I used to say that the lack of luck is the worst professional mistake. So we need to be lucky at one point to discover who we are. And then, of course, we need to pursue this avenue. It's a never-ending process of exploration. And while we're working on what we are really good at, it's worth remembering that even if we're the best in our field, there's still the competition breathing to our backs. And if we rest on our laurels, if we, pretend that, we can relax drinking champagne and not doing hard work, so we'll be busted by the opposition that learn from their mistakes and from our victories. So I always had a simple idea, thanks to my late mother, that it's you have to fight your own excellence. You have to compete with your own excellence, and then you'll never be short of opponents.
It seems to me that there's also a bit of a curse to being gifted, though, because if you are gifted, you may not work as hard as somebody else would just because you're gifted, right? You have the ability, and that might impact your own ambitions and your own hunger. And again, given the foundation, I'm sure you see all kinds of people coming in and wanting to learn from you and from the foundation. But how do you think through that dynamic of, if somebody's naturally gifted, they may not be really reaching their full potential because there's a degree of not quite arrogance, but feeling that they don't have to try too hard because they're naturally good at it.
Yeah, again, it depends on your ambitions. So, I mean, you could be really good at something, and if you're happy to be, number one in your village, in your town, in your city, so I'm sure, you can avoid working really hard. But if you are looking for top spot in the world, so you have to work really hard, and you have to accept the fact that you may not succeed, but that does not stop you from trying and trying again. So it's about, you mentioned errors. It's about making mistakes, learning from mistakes, learning from them quickly. And I met quite a few people in my walk of life, I meant chess, where the talent prevented them from working hard because they were quite pleased with what they accomplished at a certain point. And naturally, they failed to realize their full potential.
Yeah, and I think everybody knows somebody in their life that's like that, right? Somebody that's a friend or a colleague that you see is so good at something, but just doesn't want to put the full effort in because there's a degree of not quite laziness, but whatever that term would be, right? And that's why I think it's also challenging because you can be really good at something, but you still have to be self-motivated. And personally, I find that the best self-motivation comes from not actually being the best and not actually being gifted in your domain, just so you can prove to somebody else that the harder you work, the more likely you can outdo them.
Yes, but since I was the best in my domain, yeah, I had to find a different kind of motivation. And it was fairly simple. Again, going back to the old days, when I grew up with my mother, it's about making a difference. Yes, it's about winning, but still making a difference, which means finding new ideas, pushing hard to reach the horizon, which, of course, is always, beyond your reach, and always coming up with new ideas. Again, you're competing with your own excellence. And I found that's was a formula that helped me to shift from chess to other things that I'm doing now, just, doing lectures on AI, on cybersecurity, on geopolitics, on human rights. I wrote 3 books since I left chess: How Life Imitated Chess, on decision making, Winter's Coming, on geopolitics, and deep thinking on human and machine collaboration and competition. And I always try to bring something new into the game. I was not full of my own importance outside of the game of chess. I knew that the difference I made in chess I could not repeat elsewhere, but I still knew that I could help people to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was never shy of using opportunity to present my opinions, even if they were contradictory at the time.
I have to tell you, I'm fascinated by the discussions you have on artificial intelligence. And maybe for those that don't know in the audience, talk through, Garry, the experience with the IBM supercomputer Deep Blue. Again, I know you get these questions all the time, but I want to set the stage for the audience for some other questions here. But talk about that 1997 chess match and how this kind of debate about man versus machine maybe isn't fully accurate in the way that most of society tends to think of it.
Yeah, I thank you for mentioning 1997 match, but please, just tell the audience that it was the rematch because I won the first one in 1996 in Philadelphia. So yeah, and I had plenty of experience of playing with machines, competing with machines, and eventually working with machines. That was not the first match, first event that I took part against computers. Machines made considerable progress on the end of 80s. And the prototype of the Blue program called Deep Thought, designed by the group of young scientists from Carnegie Mellon University, it was the first program to be the grandmaster in tournament chess back in 1988. So, and they were so excited with the outcome. They challenged me. I was a world champion already in 1989. We played 2 games with a short time control, about I think an hour and a half for a whole game, and I won handily both games. Then we had some other programs, chess engines that we could put on our laptops or our PCs in the 90s. And I have to say that we already suffered some painful defeats in several games. We were still dominant, but you could see already that the balance was shifting in machine's favor. So when we look at the human-machine relations, so you can separate these relations in 4 phases. The phase 1 is that, machines they are just, it's just a laughing stock. So they are so weak. It's a nice toy. Second is, machines, they can do something. They can play. They can beat a lot of amateur players, but still no match to the top players. Actually, in 1985, I played a simultaneous exhibition against 32 chess computers in Hamburg on June 1985, and I won all 32 games. So, and then the phase 3, which is by the way the shortest one, is where humans and machines can compete. But this phase doesn't last long because eventually machines getting better ever after. That's what happens with the game of chess, with every other game, shogi, Japanese chess, Go, Dota, Texas Hold'em poker, any game that we can describe as a closed system. So it's eventually, puts machine on top. And back in 1997, so I faced Deep Blue, and after winning the first match in 96, so I was quite optimistic. And what's happened in this match is quite, important because contrary to the expectations of founding fathers of computer science, when you go back to the late 40s and 50s and you read what they said, Alan Turing, Claude Shannon, Norbert Wiener, they had no access to computing power. So they were so eager. And they believed that the only way for a machine to show true intelligence is to somehow emulate the process of human cognition. Hate criticizing founding fathers, but they were wrong. Because what Deep Blue did had nothing to do with human cognition. It was a brute force. You call it, actually many call 1997 match as the dawn of AI, artificial intelligence. But Deep Blue was as intelligent as your alarm clock. It's a very expensive one, $10 million a piece, but at the end of the day, it didn't have to be intelligent because all we need from machines is just to make sure they make fewer mistakes. And Deep Blue did. It succeeded because it benefited from my mistakes, since all the humans, with the best of us, we're prone to make mistakes, sometimes serious mistakes. And today, if you look at the games we played in 1997, and you use your chess app on a mobile phone, and even better if you have a chess engine on your laptop, they are so much better than Deep Blue. So they will tell you that this match was full of mistakes from both sides, but I made my mistakes were gravest compared to what Deep Blue did. So I immediately recognized after 1997 match that while we still could compete and the competition continued, I played two more matches with Israeli program and German program in 2003. Other top players also competed against some leading programs, which were at least as good, probably even better than Deep Blue. And actually, I tied two more matches in 2003. But I knew that our time was coming to an end. So it was not about competing. It was about working with them. So, and since 1998, I have been advocating an idea of human-machine collaboration. So that was the lesson I learned from the failure in 1997. It's time to start working with machines, finding the best combination of human intelligence and human creativity and machines brute force and pattern recognition. Oh, thank you very much for the question. So I'm a big, I don't know, say fan or supporter of crypto. I was one of the speakers at the Coindesk conference in Austin, Texas, a couple of months ago. I believe it's the future because our economy is turning to be digital. So more and more elements of our life, even routine life, is shifted into digital. Yeah, and it's natural to assume that the financial instruments will also become digital, and watching the power of use of the central banks and governments, I'm not surprised a lot of people now shifting their face into mathematics, believing that following the regulations that's depend on machines calculation is less risky than being at mercy of political class and financial instruments used by regulators that very often are just solving their problems at our expense.
The impression, obviously, by most people when it comes to artificial intelligence in the long haul is that we're all going to be subservient to robots and machines. And I don't think that's obviously the case because that's sensationalism, that's Hollywood, as I know you've talked about before. But when you think about the term artificial intelligence, I want that's maybe not the right term because I've heard you use this. I make this point that machines are very good at choosing versus deciding, right? Which is a more of a human element. Talk through that dynamic a little bit because this idea that labor will be fully replaced by machines is not fully borne out through history, and a lot of the fear may not be justified.
Yeah, look, labor replaced by machines. That's called human history. So we got stronger because of machines. We got faster because of machines. Machines always played a role in it at every phase of technological revolution. So that improved our living conditions. So 200 years ago, most of people, 90+% in the developed world lived in the countryside. So the agriculture now, 2-3% now work in agriculture in America. 100 years ago, it was industrial age, and now there's many of these blue collar jobs being lost because of automation. But that's how we move forward because we are having lives that are longer, richer, more entertaining. And that's because of machines. Now, the difference that is now machines are threatening, something we always believe was sacred. And now the jobs that are potentially going on the chopping block of automation, they are white collar jobs. And people who have them, they came from the colleges, they have Twitter accounts. So they could be very loud about the problems. But it's the same process. It's time to actually, depart from a traditional formula that we used 20, 30 years ago. He or she was so good because worked like a machine. No, if you work like a machine now, that's bad. It's about to recognize that it's time for us to rely on our unique human qualities. Creativity, our just special form of intelligence, our ability to shift information from one closed system to another. So most of the jobs today, they are doomed. They just don't know yet. And I just think we should not cry over spilled milk, but rather look into the future. Yes, every technology in history killed tons of jobs, industries, while bringing something else, some new ideas. You look at some of the big jobs today, some jobs that, so lucrative, like a 3D engineer or a social media manager. So you have so many jobs now related to modern technology that didn't exist 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. Now imagine what kind of jobs our children, our grandchildren will be coveting 10, 15 years from now. But it's a market regulated program. I don't want to sound callous. I understand, this is they're always, winners and losers. But if we recognize that as humanity, and if we believe, we are humanity, 8 billion or so people around this planet, so we'll be winning. Because when, let's say, radiology, people say, oh, so many jobs now could be in danger. Good white collar jobs, well paid jobs in America or in some leading European countries because technology, because AI, because machines could do a better diagnosis, and you don't need maybe a top professor, but a good nurse or just it's the assistant, could actually operate this machine better than somebody with many scientific degrees on his or her shoulders. But then the other side of the coin, it's the services getting cheaper. So it's more affordable. And thanks to modern technology, these services could be available online for people in Africa, Asia, God knows where. So I think it's important to recognize that as a humanity, the balance is always in our favor. And speaking about AI as artificial intelligence, I always oppose this term because it doesn't sound friendly. It sounds menacing. And of course, as you mentioned, Hollywood production, this brainwashing production, created a sense of panic in the minds of millions and millions of people. So, but let's be objective. AI is not a magic wand, but it's not a Terminator. It's not a harbinger of utopia or dystopia. It's not a passage to heaven, but it doesn't open the gates of hell. It's a technology developed by us. And that's why I suggest that we call it augmented intelligence, because at the end of the day, it's a combination of human and machine intelligence. You may call machine intelligence AI, artificial intelligence. You may call human intelligence, it's acquired intelligence. This is what we, with what we have, just it's as born. But eventually it's augmented intelligence, because this is how we cooperate with machines. This is how we move forward by benefiting from technology while recognizing that every step forward, it's not without a cost. It's a bumpy road. And actually, for those who are interested, I had an article in Harvard Business Review with Professor De Kremer, so talking about various forms of intelligence.
I wonder if there are unintended consequences that you can speak through to this idea that you mentioned technology obviously kills jobs, and history has shown that obviously. But I wonder if technology in its current state is killing off creativity and critical thought, right? Because if at the simple, typing a few things on your keyboard, you can go to Google and find the answer to pretty much anything and everything, and people will naturally go to that, which is at the top of the fold, the first few results. If that results in sort of a shorter attention span, a lack of really thinking deeper, and instead just reacting because there's no need to think if everything's at your fingertips.
Yes, but look, machines, can get you to any destination of human knowledge database. But at the end of the day, it's still for us to choose what is relevant. Can machines ask questions? Yeah, they can ask questions. Do they know what questions are relevant? I don't think so. Pablo Picasso used to say that computers are useless because they can only give you answers. So it's our, human privilege to ask questions and write questions and to define the directions, how we move into the future. And I think it's the relying exclusively on machines' ability to show you all the data and provide all the answers still, doesn't make you creative. The creativity is finding a way of merging this machine's immense power, brute force, with your ability to identify what's right for this very specific problem right now.
Everybody here, make sure you follow Garry and check out his various books. We'll talk about Winter is Coming shortly. I shared it at the top of the Twitter space here, but certainly unequivocally worth a read.
Yeah, I don't think that we are near the point where it becomes a factor. Eventually, probably yes, but I don't believe from what I know. And look, I always know what I know, and I know what I don't know. So I know where are the limits of my ignorance. But at the best of my knowledge now, and I'm fairly confident that the quantum computing is not yet a factor that you should put into the even midterm calculations of evaluating risks for your portfolio. So where do we start? So first of all, thank you very much for just reminding us So how much success was brought to humanity by capitalism and by democracy. Market economy and liberal democracy are two pillars that secure the development of our planet and our civilization and humanity as a whole. And I'm always getting concerned, even annoyed, when people are just trying to challenge the accomplishments of capitalism by pointing out at obviously at ills of our society or some wrongdoings of the past, ignoring the fact that it's a bumpy road. But at the end of the day, we just have to look at the result. Let's go to the portfolio. If you look at this portfolio of capitalism, it was successful. Long term, it always brought success. And I think it's very important for us to actually to look into the future, recognizing that there were certain values that made us successful. And it's amazing that a lot of thing that's happening now, this on the negative side, they're results of total ignorance or unwillingness to actually look into the past, recognizing that certain things worked and certain didn't work. And while in any form of business, so if it doesn't work, you ignore it. I mean, you throw it in a dustbin of history. But unfortunately, some of the philosophies, the concept, the socialist concepts that failed so many times, they have been resurrecting, and people keep trying to find the formula that could make them work, though they failed everywhere on this planet. And I think the creativity, speaking about creativity, it's the most important human quality where we could see the advantages of the free society. Because creativity means that we have to be free to make mistakes. That's bringing to what Michael said at the very beginning about errors. The freedom of making a mistake is the probably greatest relief offered by free society. You can fail. Yeah, that's not good news, but there's no punishment. And that's why we have Silicon Valley, and we don't have this analog elsewhere in other countries. The countries that try to manipulate market economy, countries that try to come up with technological breakthroughs based on central planning, they failed. The simplest demonstration of the advantages of the free world came from the recent tragedy called COVID-19. Without spending too much time, on the origin of the virus, we know one thing: it came from China. China gave us virus, and vaccine came from the United States. So that answers the question. And also, we can look at the machine side. It's going deep into this debate of the dark forecasts about the future of humanity because machines will become creative. I don't think so. I don't believe that machines could be creative for a very simple reason. Creativity, as I said, it's your freedom. It's a luxury to make mistakes. Machines do not look at any option if it doesn't offer better return. So machine cannot entertain the option or the notion of failure. Creativity means that we may fail. Actually, in many cases we do fail. So you can have thousands and thousands of startups, but only one of them will be Google. But the problem is that this for a machine, it will not operate on these premises. And of course, the central planning economy will also reject the idea that you have to rely on market forces, on invisible hand of the market, rather than the genius of a central planner. Thank you very much for this question, and I may disappoint you saying I don't know the answer because it's magic. So it's all way back this winter evening in Baku, Azerbaijan, just 68 to 69, 5-year-old kid watching his parents trying to solve a puzzle, and that's it. That was the moment where I just, I got into the game. And now, 50 plus years later, I'm still very much in love with the game. I play chess. I don't think I have to say I play chess because for me, playing chess means, being professional. I'm an amateur, the strongest amateur on this planet now. But I still remove the pieces, and I play a few exhibition events every year. I don't care winning or losing. So, of course, I would like to win. But I know as I said, I'm an amateur, but I still love the game. And I think that's a real passion. That's a real love when you don't know exactly what is there, but it's something that that is built for you, and you belong to this domain. Yeah, I think we should tell the audience that Banja Luka is now part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was then Yugoslavia, of course. It's the southern part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's the northern part of the country. Yeah, and thank you very much for reminding me about this great memory. I arrived in Banja Luka as a young star, but I have not played a single international event, adult tournament. It was my first one. And I have to say that the organizers were not very happy when Soviets sent former world chess champion Tigran Petrosian, one of my mentors, and a kid. Okay, I was already a very strong player. I already qualified to the Soviet national championship. I even, played one Soviet national championship. Was one of the strongest, probably the strongest tournament at the time. And I survived. So that's the first test. And I qualified to play the next championship. But I had no recognition as the foreign player. And there was some sort of doubts. Okay, so we'll see how this kid could do. And I did well. In the first 10 games, I made 2 draws and 8 wins. So then everybody realized that, the star was born. And I always had very fond memories of this tournament. And actually, speaking about the former Yugoslavia, so that was a country where I won all my tournaments. And again, probably it's not surprising that now I'm in Croatia, so it's the citizen of this country. And one of my Kasparov foundations is Adriatic, and I've been working on helping to revive the glory of the chess in the Balkans. That has been unfortunately in decline since the end of the Cold War. I don't know favorite Yugoslav because I met many of them, played with many of them. I always had very friendly relations with Ljubojevic, though he, as you know, he lived in Spain for a long time, but he's still a Yugoslav player. So that's one that I had very friendly relations, yes, and one that I was tremendous respect was Gligoric. So Yugoslav chess was something that was part of my childhood because that was the second top chess country in the world after Soviet Union. So that's why, and we always looked at chess in former Yugoslavia as one of the biggest generators of tournaments and ideas. Let's not forget that Chess Informator was also a product of former Yugoslavia, and that was the beginning of the all chess databases. Not sure that's the fair question because my inclination to say that's the most favorite players that I beat most often, because at the end of the day it's about winning. So
I gotta steal that line one day.
I had some players that like watching playing and I like very much Vichenan's style, but this is one of the reasons that I had very high score against him. So I'm probably less, attracted by Vladimir Kramnik's style, but that's the man who took my crown from me. So I lost him into the match. So it's a bit odd to ask even former professional player about favorite opponents. So because it's always, affected by the score between us.
And maybe relate that to Winter is Coming, right? To the original book that you put out a few years ago.
Yeah, 7 years ago, actually. Yes. And when the book was released, it had very, timid reception by the mainstream media, and they stopped just short of calling me a warmonger because they didn't like all these warnings. Now, going back to what you said, my presidential ambitions. Look, it's back in 2007, so all I wanted is to show that at that time, 15 years ago, we had no freedom in Russia, no chance to be registered as a candidate. I just wanted to demonstrate that Putin's Russia was heading towards fascism. Again, nobody wanted to hear, nobody wanted to listen. I couldn't put my name on the ballot. They just had so many obstacles that even with my name recognition and with my resources, so I couldn't get through them. Now, as of tragic events now, it's a war that started 8 years ago, not just 6 months ago. And what makes it even more tragic is that Putin has been preparing for this war for years, not even hiding his preparation. And now, after 20 plus years of comfortable business with Russia, it's time to pay the bills. Europe now just recognized that dependence on Russia, on Russian energy, was a trap. And we have been saying it all the time. My article about the danger of Russian gas supply to Europe, it was called Gas Poisoning, was published in Frankfurt Allgemeine in 2006, in July 2006. And I knew it was coming because I grew up in the Soviet Union and I was listening to Putin's speeches, and his sentiments were not secret. He kept repeating that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. So nobody can say that he has been attacking you. He has been coming out of the blue with his attack against Ukraine. He brought 200,000 troops, surrounded Ukraine from the north, east, and south, and even brought his Pacific fleet to the Black Sea. And now we have this war, tragic war, where Ukraine is paying in blood tens of thousands of lives, and 1/3 of the country being demolished. There are, I think, nearly 120,000 buildings being destroyed. So just, to understand that Russia attacked more than 20,000 civil installations and only 300 military installations in Ukraine, just to give an idea about the scope of demolition and the genocidal nature of this war. So what I want people to hear, and since you're reading my Twitter, you know my point of view, it's to recognize this is our war. This is not just Ukrainian war. It's a war for all of us because it's about defending the international law and order. It's about sovereignty of Ukraine, which means, it's the protecting the rule of law and democracy around the world. And God forbid Putin succeeds there, the war will not stop. So the only victory for Ukraine is full liberation of the country, total destruction of Putin's military machine. And that gives us hope that we'll start in Russia from the scratch, rebuilding the country. And also it gives us a hope that we'll find the right algorithm of rebuilding the system of international security that has totally collapsed since the end of the Cold War.
Everybody, if you click on Gary's profile picture on the space, you can follow. It's not going to take you away from the space. I encourage everybody here to follow Gary and obviously check out his various books.
Yeah, I have been a proponent for many years, for decades, of chess becoming part of educational system for the reasons you've described. But I don't want to put too much emphasis on the game of chess as the tool to upgrade your various talents. At the end of the day, again, it sounds flattering what you said, but at the end of the day, the aptitude for playing chess is nothing else than aptitude for playing chess. It's about your ability to learn something from the game that could, help you utilize this special chess qualities, like, seeing the big board. It's a big picture. So recognizing how effect of a move on the queen side, could jeopardize or enhance your chances on the other side of the board. So it's about looking for the patterns. I think that it's very useful for kids, just to help them improve their skills in math and reading. It's also about responsibility because you have to make decisions and there's no one there to help you, and you have to follow the rules. But as the unique mover and shaker, I would be very interested in describing chess this way. I don't know, because it's a multi-layer question, so I'm trying to find there's the shortest answer because we're pressed by time. So yes, at the beginning of the second phase of the invasion, thank you for calling it that, the Russia saw a mass protest for about a week or two. A couple of hundred, maybe 250,000 people roughly made to the streets in various cities. But let's not forget, 250,000, 300,000 I can give you, out of 140 million. That's a very, very small percentage. Actually, it's not percentage. It's just few decimal points. So that's it. It's the 16,000 that were arrested, probably nearly 1,000 or more, have been convicted, and that's it. So as of now, there is some sort of apathy. A lot of people sitting on the fence. Some of them supporting the war, but it's quite unfortunate that there's no real anti-war movement. And the negative opinion of war in Russia now is very much based on on Putin's failure to win. And that's, again, unfortunately, that's in the Russian national cycle. So all the revolutions in Russia, all the changes happened after lost wars. If you go back to the Crimean War, 1853, 1856, that led to the abolition of serfdom in Russia in 1861. Then the Russo-Japanese War that led to the constitutional monarchy Then the failure to succeed in World War I led to the collapse of the Romanov dynasty, and the Bolsheviks took over. And the retreat from Afghanistan, failure to win the war in Afghanistan, it was the last drop that contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So the only hope for Russia, for the future of Russia, is the Putin's collapse in Ukraine, Putin's total loss of all the territories, not only territories gained after February 24th, but full liberation of Ukraine, including Crimea and Sevastopol. And as you pointed out, this war was prepared in the daylight. I always, challenge the audience, speaking to the audiences, professional audiences, experts analyzing the data. How could you have missed it? Because, if you look at the country that is preparing for war, the best indication of the preparation is the budget. And when you look at Putin's budget over the last 10 years, you could have anything more, relevant as a demonstration of his plans. Because what do you do if you prepare for the war? You start increasing your military expenditure. It's there. Then you start investing more in security apparatus. There. Then you double, triple your expenditure on propaganda. It's there. Then you keep cutting all the non-vital expenses like social security, housing, education. There. And what kind of commodity you buy when you're preparing for war and sanctions? Gold. It's there. So every indicator, plus propaganda, as you talked about it, calling Ukraine a failed state and calling for recovery of what was, Russia's birthright, the territories. So it's all indicated that he was preparing for major assault on Ukraine. And beyond that, if he had succeeded on taking Kyiv in 3 days as he planned, and total blindness and lack of political will in the free world, both in America and in Europe, convinced Putin that he could do whatever, and military success would justify the most brazen actions. It's quite unfortunate that we still have some debates about the war in Ukraine among even decent individuals who are still talking about other things, than Putin's imperialist ambitions. But it's about NATO expansion, it's about this, and so this is, you may talk about mistakes made by the free world. You may criticize the presidents, Bush 41, Bill Clinton. By the way, that's what I did. I have a record of criticizing 6 consecutive presidents in America, so that's why nobody can blame me for being partisan. Obama or, of course, Trump and Biden. But at the end of the day, it's not about their mistakes that led to the bloodshed directly. It's Putin's policies. And while we know that Europeans were very slow to respond to Hitler's threat in the 30s, at the end of the day, it's Nazis that committed these crimes. So now we just have to recognize that it's time to concentrate on achieving one goal and only winning the war, because that will help us not only to prevent the world slipping into the abyss, but also to offer us a path into the future.
I think that's a good way to end the space. Everybody here, again, thank you for joining. Make sure that you follow Garry here on Twitter. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Garry. Really do appreciate your time here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael.